SoFlo Real Estate Show, your go-to source for the latest insights into South Florida's dynamic property market. My name is Athena Barrocas. I'm your go-to Weston and South Florida realtor. Today we have James Gonte on, your expert home inspector, and we're diving into the crucial topic for all prospective home buyers in South Florida. What's the fuss about home inspections in South Florida? So our goal today is to shed some light on this. Welcome, Jim. I'm really happy to have you here. And thank you for joining me in this deep dive.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, James, and how you became a home inspector and how much you love this field.
Now it's going to be really interesting. Back in 1992, my family was buying a 48-unit apartment building, and I was there during the inspection. And I was saying, wow, what a lousy job they're doing. How about if I open a home inspection business and do it much better? And that's exactly what I did. Back in 1992, I started my company called A1 Property Service Company. We cover now the entire state of Florida. I have an office in Miami, Sebring, and Orlando. We do commercial residential inspections. We also do environmental testing and insurance inspections. So basically, that's it.
You're covering everything.
Everything.
But you've had a lot of years into the business to really grow it to all those multiple facets. So
Yes.
That's really exciting. But I want to go back to what you just said. You saw a building with your parents years ago, and you thought the inspection was horrible. What
Correct.
do you remember about it being horrible? What comes to mind that would make you say, I'm going to open an inspection company and do it better?
I saw they weren't, thorough. They did not have an order. They were going from here and bouncing back and forth. And I said, listen, when you do an inspection, you're gonna follow an order. Who trained me was a military person. So he always says, James, do things in military order. And what that means is, going through the property through your right-hand side like a snake so you don't miss anything. And the company that was hired back in 1992 to do my family's purchase of a multifamily building, they were bouncing all over the place. They weren't thorough. They did not know how to communicate well with the tenants. And their reports was nothing to write home about. It wasn't thorough.
Yeah. And unfortunately, James, we still see that today in 2025. I can't tell you how many times, a client will say, I'm going to hire my own inspector. And how do they do that? They start calling for price. And then I'm there with the inspector and the client. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is good, or they're not calling out things, or they're not looking at areas that are correct. I remember one time it was a condo, cute little 1-bedroom condo. And the inspector's just flying through this condo because it's 900 square feet. And we both know there's not a lot in condos when you're small, but there are things you can find. So I'm like, why does the floor feel a little spongy in this area? And when you're in high heels, you got a little bit more of a perception in it too. I'm like, it feels spongy. And so I'm looking around and I open the closet right there and the water heater's in there. Now, it didn't have water on the floor. There were no signs of leakage. It wasn't rusty, but I'm like, I'm on sponge, right? And the heater's here. So I had him come back upstairs and re-examine it. And sure enough, water had been leaking under the subfloor from behind, underneath, and out onto the hallway. Okay, it wasn't hard to find if you took your time and did exactly what you said, because that wasn't easy. Oh my God, it's spongy, right? And so I like to caution at this point, kind of caution our listeners and our viewers not to shop price when it comes to looking for an inspector, but really look at the reviews and look at your referrals from your realtors or your lenders, because we know who is good out there. We know who's going to protect you through the home buying process. So thank you for that great example, James. That just really brought it home. But I know you have a lot more. We're going to get to some more of those examples. I call them the wowsies and the inspections. And so I'm looking forward to you sharing some more. But what I'd like to kind of switch over to, because it's really a hot topic here in South Florida, and that is the 40-year recertification and the 10-year structural for the condo market. I know we're going to get into single family homes, but I don't think we're going to do a service to our clients if we do not address this hot topic. Very hot. So let's talk about the condo market for a few minutes. And what's the buzz about the 40-year reinspection and the 10-year structural inspection? Can you shed some light on this?
Absolutely. The 40-year recertification actually started in Miami-Dade County. That's a little history of it. It started when a balcony in the city of Miami collapsed, and the county enacted the 40-year recertification program. Then it was enacted by Broward County. So those are the only two counties that had a 40-year inspection. Then after the collapse of Champlain and Surfside, they changed the law, the Florida legislature, and they made it for the entire state of Florida. Now, the inspection, the first 40 year of a structure, according to the existing law, is structural and electrical in Dade County, including parking lot illumination. So Dade County, it was structural, electrical, and parking lot illumination. And in Broward County, it was only structural and electrical. They left out parking lot illumination. And it's a recertification for reoccupancy, just to make sure the building is safe for people to live in them. Now, the law changed a little bit, and any building built before 1993 needs to do a 30-year inspection, which is the same thing. It's electrical and structural, okay? Then every 10 years after. Now, this is a big deal because you have to maintain these high-rise condominiums. It's always recommended these high-rise condominiums be painted every 5 years, okay? And the
5 years.
at least every 5 years, because remember,
Wow. Okay.
that's a recommendation. Usually they do it every 10 years. I recommend every 5 years. And the reason why is South Florida is so unique. High relative humidity, UV and VA rays, the color of the paint starts fading. And that's the time to do concrete restoration, because when you pressure clean a building, you're going to see cracks. You're going to see spalling. You're going to see popping of concrete. That's the time to fix those things before you put a new fresh coat of paint. Remember, down here in South Florida, you're next to the ocean. The salt ocean is very destructive for corrosion of the rebar inside the concrete. The purpose of rebar is to hold the concrete together. And that's what it is in a nutshell. And with the parking lot illumination, that is super important as you walk in the common areas of the exterior, the parking lots, the walkways. There has to be enough illumination, which is measured in foot candlelight. So you need 1 foot candlelight for every square foot. And that's a device that you go out there and you measure it to make sure it qualifies for that. But it's all about safety. It's life safety. All inspections really are about life safety, especially the 40-year inspection.
Yeah. And it's a shame because well, first of all, it's important because you mentioned, we have the salt air, we have the intense sun, we have the UV rays. We have so much going on here environmentally that affects single homes, but especially those large, tall high rises. And, whether you agree or not, as a homeowner or as a condo owner, those costs start to add up. And now what we're seeing is the fact that legislature came out in addition to maintenance is that you have to have reserves, which is important in order to pay for some of these structural defects that are being found in the inspections. So the condo market right now is going through an adjustment period. But I really feel, James, that at the end, it's going to come out a lot better. We're going to have safe buildings. We're going to have great maintained buildings. We're going to have reserves for repairs. And it's just a really big, unfortunate situation that we all have to go through here in South Florida as we look at home ownership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These buildings, like any property, you need to give proper maintenance, and proper maintenance costs money. And, unfortunately, nobody wants to pay more for their assessments and monthly maintenance. But if you're going to live in a condo, it requires more maintenance than a single family house.
It really does. And we can't kick the can. That proverbial can down the road cannot be kicked down the road. We have to be able to say what is required. What is the capital improvement that is required? Do we have reserves? Pay for it. We don't have reserves. We have to assess. It's just part of living within the structure of a beautiful condo, maybe on the beach or with beautiful views. It's part of home ownership. And I thank you so much, James, for explaining it to everybody, because there was a lot of confusion out there and there will continue to be confusion. So thank you for doing that.
No, my pleasure.
So let's talk about home buyers and resale homes. Let's switch out of the condo market and go into, the home buying for single family homes. I'd like to talk a little bit more about this because there is some more confusion. I was talking about my clients to you the other day that are coming in from California. And they're like, well, what kind of inspections do you do out there in South Florida? So I'm naming them and they're like, oh my goodness, why so many? What are they for? So I'm like, oh, you got to listen to my podcast when I'm done with it. And so let's talk about the home inspections and what are some of the standard inspections home buyers need to prepare for.
Absolutely. A typical home inspection when you call my company includes roof, structural, termites, electrical, plumbing, AC system, all appliances, interior, exterior, 4-point insurance inspection, and windstorm mitigation insurance inspection. That's the basic package. Beyond that, there's other inspections which are very important. For example, if the house was built before 1975, I recommend a sewer scope inspection. That's for your cast iron drain pipes to make sure they're okay. Number 2, since there's high relative humidity in the state of Florida, I recommend mold testing. What we do in my company, we do a visual inspection first, then we do a humidity check, a moisture meter check, we use thermal imaging, and we take air samples that go to an EPA-approved laboratory for analysis. Also, your clients coming from the north, they're used to radon gas inspections. We're also licensed in radon gas inspections. Also, if the property has a septic tank, we do septic tank inspections. For example, if the property's on the water, we do dive-in seawall inspections. Also, if the house was built before 1978, we do lead-based paint inspections. We are truly a full-service inspection company. But obviously, when the client calls us, we ask them for the address and we send up proposals with the basic inspection plus the optional inspections recommended due to the age of the property.
That's fabulous because there is a packet that's required, and you had mentioned that packet, and it's for not only for the home buyer to understand what type of condition the home is in which they're purchasing, maybe negotiate credits or repairs from the seller, but more importantly, to understand what the home is. Is it on the water? What type of inspections are needed? What kind of maintenance is going to be required? The septic tank, same thing. Let's inspect it, but understand how a septic tank works. What is your maintenance requirement for that as you move forward? So inspections are not only for that moment in time, but they're there to help the new home buyer understand how to maintain their home, so that way their home continues to function at the optimal performance. And that's really important. So let me ask you a question, James.
Sure.
What are some of the most typical failures you see in the traditional reports that you generate?
A lot of failures are electrical and plumbing. It's hard to pinpoint. I've been inspecting for 33 years. I've seen so many things that I've inspected. The last one was last week. I went into an attic and I saw that there was reinforcements 2x4s from the ceiling joist to the rafters. And in an area that I noticed, it was a converted garage. And what was happening is when I was doing my interior inspection, I saw the drywall separating. So that's not a good sign. There in the attic, we found subterranean termites also. What's super important with my company is we always include a WDO termite inspection report. That is super important. That's done by another inspector that's only doing WDO. What is WDO? Wood destroying organisms. Not only termites, but wood rot also.
Yeah, wood rot's huge. That is huge. We think in South Florida, we don't have termites, we don't have wood rot. Not true.
We have it all.
Not true at all.
We have it
It's all over. It's all over. But when you walked into a house, what is one of the things you look at? I know you said electrical. And a lot of times it's either the electrical box is kind of like outlawed, or we have, people, homeowners kind of using different types of, what do you call it? Doubling up?
Double taps.
Double taps.
Yeah.
And so that's no good. But what else are you seeing with the electrical?
Well, back to the double tap. Sometimes it's so really ridiculous because you remove the electrical panel, you're seeing a double tap. But then you're seeing there's 3 other spaces. So they could buy a breaker and have a professional electrician install another breaker and just move that wire over to another breaker. It's crazy. A breaker costs $30. The service call might cost you $150, but you could save yourself from a fire.
Yeah, 100%. The safety on the electrical is so big.
And as you know, down here in South Florida, there's two panels that the insurance company don't like to insure. One is a Zinsco panel, and one is a Stablock panel, which is FPC, Florida Pacific panel. They don't like to insure them because they were found to be defective. And back to the condominiums, mostly you find them in condominiums, those panels.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Interesting.
Condos built between the 60s up to 70s, you'll see those Stablock panels, the FPE and the Sylvania panels. So
Right.
something to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I'm doing my walkthrough for a seller and I see that panel, first thing I say is, you got to get rid of that panel. You have to change it out before we can sell this house. I mean, that is how important it is not to have a panel that's outlawed, right?
Correct.
So that's really important. Have you seen anything else on your initial that you go, oh my goodness?
I was doing an inspection on the exterior of the property in Homestead. I'll never forget this. And I go, I wonder what's behind this cage that he has in the back. So I go back out there.
Cage?
A cage, a big cage, fence cage, chain link fence cage.
Interesting.
I go back out there and I'm looking, and there's a 12-foot alligator.
What?
In that
Oh my
cage.
gosh, no way.
That scared it just scared me. So I asked the seller, I go, do you have a permit for this alligator? He goes, absolutely, we rescue alligators. I mean, this thing was huge. Then he goes to me, do you want me to show you how I feed him? He grabs a chicken, a full chicken, throws it in the cage, and that alligator just jumps out and eats the whole chicken.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I've seen that. I've seen big pigs also. This was in Broward County. I was doing an inspection, another cage situation. I go up to the cage and I see a big, gigantic pig, a beautiful pig who's really, you never expect to see that in a residential zoned R1, an animal like that, because you're really not supposed to have that animal. And the pig was a vegetarian.
It's so cute.
The owner was giving him carrots and things like that. You see a lot of sad things when you do an inspection. You see a lot of dangerous things. You don't know what you're going to find when you do an inspection. And that's why I love my job. Every day, every inspection is an adventure. And I love adventures.
No, it must be. I know from when I do, looking at homes for either my seller or for the buyer, there's a lot of times I'm like, oh, I didn't expect this. So from your perspective, it must be over the top.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Let's switch to something called poly pipes for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, those are big here in South Florida as well. And for those who don't know poly pipes, I'm going to let James talk about that. But poly pipes, unfortunately, the insurance company does not like them, and they do have to be remediated prior to the transfer of property. So if you're a seller and you have poly pipes, well, you're going to have to remediate that prior to selling the home. So James, why don't you give us the scoop on what poly pipes are, why they're considered an outlaw with the insurance company.
Perfect. This is why it's so important before you buy a property. When you give us a call, we're looking up the address, we're looking at the date that house was built. Pipes were really started from 1980 to 1995. So if you're purchasing a piece of property from 1980 to 1995, the inspector, which is me in this case, we already have a heads up. There might be PB pipe, which is polybutylene pipe. And the problem with polybutylene is when it first came out, it's great because the plumbers loved it because it was very flexible. It wasn't like copper that you have to solder it. Then you have to worry about the lead with the solder. And it was just easy to run this flex pipe through the house. And it was cheaper also. The problem with polybutylene pipes was the fittings, the crimps. They were copper, and what happens is they were coming loose. And when they came loose, it's usually when it's in the wall. And when it's in the wall, it explodes all over the place, and then you have mold problems, and you have a fiasco of a time. So one of the questions in the 4-point insurance inspection is, does the house have polybutylene? And as soon as the inspector says yes, the insurance company says, hold it. We're not
You're like,
issuing
no, time out.
time out. Get in your corner and let's take care of this, because if they don't give you insurance, you don't get the mortgage. You don't get the mortgage, you don't get the house. So everything trickles down. So it's very costly for the insurance companies, and that's why they banned them. Also, they're found to be defective. You could Google polybutylene pipes. But if you're purchasing a property between 1980 and 1995, I suggest you get somebody that's competent to do a proper inspection.
I agree. Because you don't want this to come out at the end of the day and then have a feud with the seller. I have known, not my clients, but I know of colleagues where their seller said, forget, we don't want to sell the house because we do not want to go through this expense. And so, things can happen. It doesn't always go through as a sale when these things come out at the very end of the transaction. So, it's a great point. And I always recommend, James, and I know you probably get these calls as well, is when I'm selling a home, listing a home before we go on market, I ask the seller, please do a 4-point so we can just get an idea of the systems and what condition they're in. So that's another great tip. Hey, James, so listen to this. Unicorn years. That's when everybody was standing outside, 50 people deep with home, for open houses. Crazy, crazy time. One of the things that came out of that, though, if you remember, and it does peek its head whenever it's a really strong seller's market, right? A hot seller's market. Buyers are like, okay, we'll pay overprice. We'll do this. We'll do that. And we'll waive all inspections. My heart goes crazy. I'm like, don't waive the inspections. And I'm not a proponent of waiving those inspections at all. What are your thoughts on this approach?
Absolutely not. That was really popular during COVID, that all the Northerners and people from California were purchasing houses and the market was hot. I mean, it was really hot. I would say those were the best years of my inspection business during COVID. Never waive your inspection period.
Okay, say that again, one more time.
Never waive your inspection periods. Something, if somebody's saying, you can't do an inspection, I would walk away from the property. You need to know as a consumer and as a buyer what you're purchasing. That is crazy. You need to know. You need to know.
You do need to know. You need to know what you're buying, just like any other consumer good. And waiving your inspection is the worst thing you could do. Now, you can waive your inspection for the contract, but you should never waive your inspection prior to buying a home. You need to know exactly what's going into that.
Correct. If
So,
that's a problem.
Yeah, huge problem, right? Huge problem. Let's switch over to wind mitigation for a moment. What is wind mitigation and why is that important to our insurance company?
Well, wind mitigation started when people were complaining about hurricane policies, and the insurance commissioner in the state of Florida proposed to do a wind mitigation. What mitigation is, it gives credits or discounts if you have certain features on your home, such as hurricane shutters, a newer roof, how the rafters are strapped to the building, the nailing patterns, if it has a second water resistant barrier. They would give a credit based on our wind mitigation report.
Yeah. And so this is a required report. Sometimes homeowners can't really do much about it. The type of roof they have, you can't do anything about that. But when you're buying a home and you're looking at the house and there is no protection over the openings, over the windows, that is something that you want to stop and pause as a consumer and say, what are we doing? Does it have impact windows? No. Okay. Does it have shutters? No. Okay. Does it have panels? No. Now you have a huge expense that you have to overcome, that you should probably be negotiating with the seller at that point. What are some other issues that come up with wind that a consumer can remedy prior to closing?
Well, the main thing is that all openings, such as windows, doors, garage doors, skylights, glass blocks, also need hurricane protection. And the way it works is, if one window doesn't have hurricane protection, you're not getting a discount. It's either all or nothing.
Oh, now say that again for our listeners.
It's either all or nothing. So if you have a window that's missing hurricane protection, you're not getting a discount until you remedy that window. for that opening.
So you can have a new roof. You can have impact windows everywhere except for one window. You can have your hurricane door. You can have everything. And that one window is going to negate the entire discount.
Correct. The discount for the opening protection. The roof is separate.
Okay. All right. So the openings, the windows.
Correct.
All
And
right.
doors and garage doors.
Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? All of these different types of insurance requirements as far as the reports and how a house has been maintained. Super important. Let's move on to the topic you want to talk about, because I know you have a nugget of information here that not many people know about. Let's talk about home inspections for new construction. Should a homeowner opt to get a inspection on new construction at the time they buy it?
Yes, 100% yes. And you're seeing a lot of inspections being done to make sure that the builder is doing the drywall, pre-drywall inspections. So through the stages of construction, a consumer could also have their own inspector on the property as the property is being built. Then before closing, you want to do an inspection because that builder will give you a 1-year warranty. So I would go in there, let's say before closing, do a complete inspection, have a list, punch list of, for example, 20 things that are wrong. So then I would give it to the builder for him to remedy it as soon as possible before the year is over. Then what happens is a lot of consumers usually call me on the 11th month before the 12th month expires to do another inspection. One thing is doing the inspection on a new home that nobody's lived in there, so you really don't know, during that course of 11th month, the other deficiencies it might have. Not only cosmetic, but structural or the roof or leaks or whatever the case may be. So it is called an 11th month warranty. So it's super important to call me before closing and at the 11th month to do another inspection.
And that's really important. And I kind of want to slow down here for a moment because we have so much new construction going up in South Florida, up and down the Turnpike, up and down 95. There's new construction everywhere and we don't have enough homes. And we're going to see a lot more new construction coming up in our area. So that's super exciting. But what consumers don't understand is that the builder builds for the builder and the builder sells for the builder. And so it's really important that as a consumer of new construction, you have your team around you. You have your realtor, you have your lender, you have your home inspectors, because new construction just means it's a new home. It doesn't mean that, it's been sanctioned by the real estate gods as being a perfect home. That is not what it means. Go ahead. You're going to say something, James. I saw you.
That's the misconception I hear all the time. It's a brand new house. Why am I going to have it inspected? The city inspector inspected it. Just for you guys to know, the city inspector has no liability, number one. No liability at all. Everything falls back on the builder. That's number one. Number two, the city inspector is looking for code. What is code? Code is the minimum standard, the bottom standard to build a single family house or a condominium or whatever construction. It's the minimum standard. It's not the maximum standard.
No, it's a checklist for them. It's a checklist, right? It's a checklist. And then you have to hope that your builder is doing the right thing afterwards, right? They're building for the way its home's going to be built, for the safety and the maintenance of the home. And that's what you're hoping for. So I have seen, James, and you're absolutely right. I insist. You're going to get an inspection out there, right? At the time you buy your home for your home warranty, it's only 12 months. Let's get that punch list. And they are always surprised how many items come out. Because you do your builder walkthrough, right?
Right.
And the builder's like, okay, 1 week out. You get the little tape up on the wall. These are all the things we're going to do. These are the areas we found the deficiencies in. This is what we're going to cure. But you bring out your home inspector right after that. And you have a list of items for them to turn back into the builder during their 1-year warranty and get these items resolved. And then the 11th month inspection. You've been living there for 11 months. You've been turning the water on. You've been running the AC. You've been opening doors. You've been moving windows, right? You're living in this house. It's working. Well, you're going to have deficiencies at some point, most likely within those 11 months. And most homeowners do not engage in that 11th month inspection, James, right?
That's the problem. Also, when I do those inspections, sometimes I'm in the attic and they forgot to blow installation.
That's a huge one.
They forget to do something structural like do a tie in the attic, like the rafters. So there's a lot of structure. Remember, that's mass production. These mass production builders, they just want to put it up fast like an assembly line, like a Ford Motor Company. It's an assembly line. The same thing with the house. So they're not looking for details, they're looking for mass production. And
Yeah.
they forget things that you wouldn't even believe. They forget to connect the dishwasher or the plumbing or the outlets don't work or they're missing breakers. There's so many things. Don't assume that it's new. It's going to be perfect.
No, there's so much that can go wrong. One time I had a client buy new construction and they were very smart, but this is my homeowner and he was into buildings, all right, flipping and everything. So he bought this beautiful home. Well, come to find out the AC they installed was too small for the space that was required. And so he had to fight for them to put in the correct size air conditioning unit, because they had put in smaller units all throughout the new build, right? And so who knows about the other homes, but my client got the right size. So it's so important to have someone on your team to come in and take a look at that. Thank you for sharing the 11th month. That was an awesome one. So, okay, so I have five FAQs. We have some questions from our audience that came in later. So what they'd like to know is the top 5 frequency. What does the standard home inspection include?
It includes, when you call my company A1 Property Service Company, it includes the roof, the structural, the electrical, the plumbing, the mechanical AC system, the electrical, all the appliances, interior, exterior, 4-point insurance inspection, and windstorm mitigation inspection. That's the standard. If the house has a pool, then it's recommended we do a pool inspection. If it has a septic tank inspection, mold inspection, radon gas inspection, diving seawall inspection if it's on the water, on the seawall. So that's the basic inspection.
Great. Thank you, James. How long does a typical home inspection take? What should the buyer be planning for?
I would say for every 2,000 square feet of a home, I would say under 2 hours, depending on the condition of the property. If the property is vacant, it's going to be faster or more thorough. You really want to do an inspection when it's vacant, if possible. If there's furniture and stored items, excessive stored items, it's going to take longer. So I would say the average is 2 hours under 2,000 square feet.
All right, good to know. Can a home fail an inspection?
A home inspection is not pass or fail. Only a code inspector that works for the city could fail or pass an inspection. A home inspection is to tell the buyer what is working and what is not working properly.
So it's not a pass or fail, it's an information opportunity.
Correct. To disclose to the buyer what is wrong with the property that they're purchasing or what is right.
Perfect. Now, we did cover this a little bit, but here's a question for you. Going back to condo inspections, there's a thought out there, apparently, that because the unit is so small and the condo association takes care of everything else, that maybe an inspection for the condo isn't really necessary.
I do not agree, because as a buyer, you're purchasing the unit inside the condominium. Remember, a condominium is a big building sliced up in many units, and your buyer is only buying a particular unit, for example, 105. Also, to advise you what is happening now, when we do a condo inspection, let me tell you what that includes also, because I think that's important for your audience to know. A condo inspection includes electrical, plumbing, AC system, all appliances, interior of the units, and balcony and railing.
Oh,
now,
balcony and railing is different. That's wonderful.
I include that when I do an inspection with my company. Also, what's very important is that what's happening with the insurance situation, a lot of insurance companies are requiring 4-point insurance inspections and windstorm mitigation insurance inspections for that condo unit that your client is buying. Because a lot of condo units are buying windstorm only for their unit. Usually, there's a big master policy for the entire condominium, and that's for the condominium. But now, individual unit owners are putting windstorm policies on that particular unit. Also, with the 4-point insurance inspection, they want to know what kind of electrical panel the house has. They want to know if there's polybutylene pipes. So they want to do that. So I'm seeing that more and more for condo buyers. They're requesting 4-point and wind mitigations also, like a single family house.
Interesting how times change, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. If you had one piece of advice for our listeners and our audience, James, what would it be today?
Never waive your inspection, period. Never waive your inspection, period. Never.
Never. I love it. And that's why I tell my clients, never, ever, ever. So great minds think alike, I say in this particular moment. Well, I want to thank you, James, for for being the co-host today and being my special guest and sharing your expertise. Always a pleasure working with you. You're my favorite go-to inspector, and I love having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So thanks for the wrap up today. I hope everybody found some value in the home inspection and what all the fuss is about. James's information will be in the description below. I encourage everybody to reach out to him. He is an excellent inspector. And if you have any questions, always reach out to myself as well. Until next time. Thanks, James. Have a great day.